Hi everyone, I'm Vikki and I'm the founder and head coach of Momentum Life Coaching here in Australia, and I wanted to talk about a subject that I've been focusing on this whole week. It's all about the narrative, the story we share. And it's been an interesting topic coming up with a lot of clients this week as we discuss what we call defining moments. And a defining moment is a story or a narrative that you tell that then has created the identity that you have, the person you are, the way you react, or how you cope with strategies or different things in your life. And I want us to just look at the impact of what our narrative can be. So I remember when I was young, I used to love listening to the 12 Dancing Princesses. My dad had an old recorder player and we used to sit and listen to that in the lounge. And I cherish that moment with just wonder on how beautiful and magical it sounded when I used to listen to the narrator explain and share the magic of the diamonds and the gold and the silver as the princesses went into the magical land. And I cherish that moment so much. But there's also another side to that story, which when I think about it makes me realize some of the fear or some of the regret that I might have had. But it depends on how I want to tell the story that then creates the meaning I give it. And so I want us to dive into this a bit more. You know, what is the meaning we're giving something? Recently, I was chatting with a client and, you know, in the process of understanding separation, when she was younger, it was a real pinnacle moment where they realized maybe my identity of needing to control, needing to feel stable all the time has come from when I was younger and I wasn't able to create that stability, that home environment because of divorce, because of separation. She was moved a lot when she was young. And when you just start to realize that perhaps the narrative you've been holding on to when you were younger no longer needs to come with you as an adult, you can let go of some of the rules and regulations that you've set up for yourself. Whether it be that you need to make sure there's always stability and security inside your house, or you really recoil when change is upon you, that you have a visceral reaction when it comes to change. This is often because there's a narrative within your life that has caused you to become fearful of change, or has caused you to realize that the worst can happen because it's happened before. And so taking into account a narrative and being able to have someone guide you through it and let you see the other side really helps you to adjust it, that it no longer became a subject of they were fearful of change. They now were able to go, with my lessons and my learnings, I now know that I can embrace change. And change doesn't mean divorce or moving home or feeling so unsettled, because that was when I was 8 years old, not when I'm now as an adult. And so this is a very interesting piece that we can look at when it comes to the way in which we tell our narratives. So let's have a look a bit more at how we can work this out. So when you think of your narratives, there are three things that can happen. First of all, the brain naturally thinks of negative things more than positive things. Now, it did this because it was a primitive brain. We were cavewomen, cavemen, and it needed us to remember what was negative so that we wouldn't do it again. Now, we don't need that anymore. That's not how the brain is working. But we need to be able to teach our brain to see other areas and other sides to things. So it doesn't need to remember just the negative side of it. So that's the first thing. The brain can remember negativity over positivity more quickly. The second part of it is that the narrative that we keep sharing over and over again, that becomes our defining moment, our definition of who we are. And our brain loves that repetition. So if the only story you're sharing, or the part of the story you're sharing, is a specific one that's maybe not going to serve you, remember that's what your brain is going to use as the definition of who you are, how you behave, and the way in which you view the world. So it's something to consider. Is the way you're narrating the story one that serves you? And then the third part is that often we only see a tiny piece of our narrative. And so you might have focused on something in particular, but we forget that there's a whole entire story behind it. Now, I wanted to share a story of when I remember first becoming a mum. I have so many stories where I can share just those small moments of hardship, or where it was difficult, or I didn't get it right, or I was, I felt really terrible. And I went through a lot of hard times trying to figure out how to be a first-time mom. But if that's the only story I'm sharing, it takes away all the other things that happened. And if I actually sit back and think of the whole time, the 5 years of being a mum, it really shifts, because then I go, well, actually, I remember her first walking, cuddling me. I'm desperate for her to lie and cuddle on me and fall asleep now, and she's 5. I can't do it. I remember when she took her first steps. I remember when we used to have her putting on lipstick and she used to go pop it with me, and I loved it. And I see those photos when I look at them, and I have so much joy. And then I suddenly realize, actually, the movie scene or the narrative I've been sharing is so small in comparison to the whole entire movie that is First Time Mum. So when you actually look at your narratives, I want you to consider looking at the whole picture, not just a single moment that you've then used to define and speak about the situation over and over again. Because if it's not a narrative that serves you, we've got to learn to find the other sides of that narrative that are actually going to fit better for us and for ourselves in the future. So the 3 things to think of is, we unfortunately recognize and keep the negative more so than we do the positive. The second thing is the narrative that we're saying truly one that serves us, that's going to help us in the narrative? Is it one that's going to make us feel empowered? And the last one is to consider, does the movie scene create the whole picture, or are we only handpicking a few of the scenes that we want? Because sometimes the narrative that we share is one that we want to hide behind. And you've got to face it every now and again. Like, am I actually using this narrative to hide behind it? Or is it a real narrative that I can actually use to grow and develop and nurture myself from? So consider the narratives you're sharing, how you're making it appear, the way in which you're using your history and your stories to navigate your world. Is your narrative in the movie scene that is your life one that you want to keep repeating, or do you want to tweak it slightly so that it serves you better, that you can get more understanding, lessons, and growth from it? It is easy to change the narrative when you decide to look at it in a different way. Bye for now.